us just now, that you would open our hearts and our minds to participate with you in your ministry, Lord. We want to represent you aright. And Lord, we ask that you guide both the presentation and also our listening, that we may be able to present you, that you may draw all men to you. All glory be to you, Lord, in thy name. Amen.
Okay, so the Divine Hour wasn't too long ago. So in review, what were the 3 principles of health ministry and gospel medical evangelism? I'm a teacher. There's always a test. We don't call it a test. We call it a quiz. The 3 principles. Doesn't have to be in order. 3 principles. Okay, 1 is free. It's all free, right? One of the principles is health ministry is free, fundamentally. What was it? Character transformation. Very good. 1 more. I'll give you a hint. It had to do with the friends. Community and support. Okay, so support and community. And then the second one was related to it being free. And then the last one is character formation or transformation, whether it be the recipient or you, the supporter. Okay, how about the 3 results of health ministry and gospel medical evangelism? The 3 results. Okay, that was number 3. You begin to worship. Conviction of the truth. And after you're convicted of truth, what are you going to go do with it? You're going to implement it. You're going to be doers of the truth. Okay, so conviction of truth, doers of the truth, and then you worship. So those are the results of health ministry or gospel medical evangelism. So what we're going to do today is talk about really how do you use the health age and why the health age. So the first thing we're going to do is one of your principles is, and you're going to see this with every step, you just want to pray, pray, pray. Always lead with prayer on whatever event you're going to do in health ministry. Begin with that first. You can't go wrong if you begin with prayer. And then you begin to plan with prayer first. Okay, pray and plan. That's the sequence. And so we want to do things decently and in order. So that's the principle when we are planning an event. What does this look like? First of all, we want to plan ahead. 3 to 4 months. Average is about 3 to 4 months. You want to plan ahead for your event. Choose your event and then decide what's the demographics of this event. What age group are we trying to target? What community are we trying to focus in on? Because I know there is an interest here in the Amish community. Then there's those who maybe want to go to the fair. Then you have your ACS community. So you've got a lot of different communities in which you can have touch points with. So you need to decide what is the event, what's the community, and then you build your team. Okay, build your team. You have a built-in team here. Does not mean you cannot ask family members to come help, community members to come help. You just need to be the ones leading it from the church. But build your community, get others to come and join you. Then you need to market appropriately. There's so many different types of marketing. There's just the door-to-door. There's now all the social media, which you're very fortunate because Pastor Ian is really great with technology. And so he understands the whole world of social media. My son has been encouraging us to have ministry that is more upstream. And I didn't really understand this whole terminology of upstream or downstream. If you think about health ministry, it tends to be more downstream. What does downstream mean? What does downstream mean? How do we define that? Because this was new to me. Downstream is going to be the community that already has the diseases. They're usually maybe not in the workforce anymore. They're more the retirees. He's saying we need to figure out how to get to upstream. That means where do we get the children? Where do we get the young families who don't have the diseases, who are still forming habits and they're not set in their ways in these health habits. So that's the kind of thing that you need to understand, especially when you're thinking of social media. Who is using more social media? That's going to be your upstream community. That's going to be the young people. That's going to be your young families. We naturally get those who are downstream. The reason why they're coming is because they probably already have 1, 2, 3 diseases that they're battling, or conditions, or health issues that they're already battling. The ideal is how do we prevent? So we eventually want to get to the point of how do we prevent this from happening? A lot of that has to do with education. Last year, I was thrilled because, and I think Marshall was part of it, the fair, the Calhoun Fair. We got a lot of young people that came through, a lot of young people. It was exciting. And then we went to the Berrien County Youth Fair and did it there. And we had predominantly young people. So I really encourage you to keep going to the fairs and invite some young people. And it may not be from your church. It might have to be from another church. It might be friends or relatives, someone else to come in and help participate so they can connect with the young people. It's important to get both streams of people, the upstream, the middle stream, and the downstream, because it's a different, depending on your target, it's going to depend on how you market to them, and it's going to depend on who your team is. So that's why it's important to choose your event, your demographic, how you build your team, and how you market. Utilizing the health aids as a marketing and registration tool. Many of you filled out the health age form. It's a wonderful thing to ask people to fill this out because people are interested, like, I wonder what it is. It's like getting blood work. People go and get blood work yearly or annually, and it gets paid for by the insurances because it's a way to mark where you're headed and your trend is. And it's a marker that's very qualitative because it gives you a number. We have normal limits, and then you get your results and you decide, am I within normal? Am I out of normal? Am I progressing towards getting worse or getting better? So health age is the same thing, and that's why we like to use it. And Mike's going to be sharing a little bit more of why it's a useful tool and how it can be used in multiple settings. So as far as the first step is you pray and you plan. You want to plan 3 or 4 months ahead. So if you're thinking about the Calhoun Fair, this is the time to start planning it, okay? And thinking about who's going to be doing this, who's going to be administering the questionnaire, getting the license for it. There's a lot of different things to consider when you're planning for your event. Now, after you've done that, I just want to break up, there's 2 types of events. There's the events that are controlled events, and you know your audience. Meaning, if you're having a function here and let's say some people have monthly supper clubs or dinner with the doctor or meatless Monday, whatever it is, and you're doing it monthly, you might have a regular group that always comes. So you already know that group and you decide you're going to do the health age. You already know who's probably going to come, and you can send them the questionnaire, and then they can come and you can give them the results. An uncontrolled event is like an Amen clinic, the fair, a health expo. You can market all that, but you may not know who all is going to be coming. So with these 2 types of events means 2 different types of planning. For the controlled event, and you kind of know the audience, you need enough time so you can tell that audience, and we did that with here, because I think Pastor Ian told you we're coming to do the training, and so what did he give you guys? The questionnaire. Then he had enough time to get it back to me, and then I was able to calculate it, and then we'll be passing those out so you have them here in a couple of minutes. We can do that in a controlled, known audience, but in an uncontrolled event where we don't know the audience, it's not so much timing because you're there. And now it's a matter of having enough people to actually have the computers and do the calculations as people walk in. And you don't know exactly how many people are going to be coming. You don't know how many individuals are going to be interested, how many questions they're going to have. So there's a lot of flexibility that needs to happen in those kinds of setting. So having more people is better so you have a backup. So that's controlled and uncontrolled, and audiences you know, audiences you don't know. So before I go on, I just want to see if you have any questions related to this slide, pray and plan, determine your event, and then the two types of events here, controlled and uncontrolled. How many were at the Calhoun Fair this last summer? I know I was there at the fair. Okay. So that one, we were trying to market on the spot, right? One thing that I saw at the Berrien County Fair is they actually had a sign that said what times that the health age and consultations were happening. And they had different events happening throughout the day. So people were coming based on what event was happening. And so then if you don't have enough people to man all morning, because it's a big commitment, right, to cover all day at the fair. So I think for Berrien County Fair, we were there from, I think, 1:30 to about 4:30. We just did 3 hours. And it was pretty steady because there was a sign there that said, this is when we're coming, and they were marketing it and telling people. And then before that, I don't know, for those of you who were there last year, I think mainly just Jen, there were a lot of kids that got excited when we were blowing up balloons, when we were doing kid things. So Berrien County Fair, they actually had a whole kids event where they had crayons, they had coloring, they had arts and crafts, then they had free water. And so all these families were coming in the mornings for that. Then at that point, they would advertise, if you want to come back this afternoon, we're having a health talk. So it was a wonderful feeder for the health talk in the afternoon. So based on your workforce or your team, you can just designate this is the time we can do it because it's a little more manageable. Then you can go ahead and market it in the mornings and let people know this is when you're coming. I think we were there Monday through Friday or Tuesday because we were here at Calhoun. So it was Tuesday to Friday. We were there in the afternoon and we were doing the health age, and it was a steady stream. And especially of young people. Sometimes they were coming just because they wanted their kids to partake of the crafts, but then the parents are sitting there. Guess what? Now we're asking them, hey, while you're waiting here, do you want to do the health age? And we had a little Life RX from Amen videos going on at the same time. So they were hearing some health tips while they were sitting there doing their crafts. So having multiple things going on is important to draw multiple demographics, okay, especially at a fair or a health expo. Okay, so that is basically the controlled event and uncontrolled event. So you need to kind of think through, number one, who's our team, what resources we have, and what target group we're trying to minister to, and how do we get their attention? If you're wanting to get the younger group, and then there are people who are passing by and they're older and they're like, oh, I just had hot dogs, I'm not doing this health age thing. And then you just tell them, no, it's okay, you can have your hot dog. This is more what you tend to usually do. Okay. So anyway, there's lots of different ways to get people to come in, but the main thing is just looking at all the different types of demographics that you want to try to touch when it's an uncontrolled event. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit more specifically about the health age tool. And this is pray again, and then why health age, the longevity. This is a big topic, longevity. A lot of people are talking about this. This is a wonderful marketing tool because what's the latest thing that's not even within any the churches that are sharing nationally about longevity? And they point to us. What group is that? That's in the National Geographics. Blue Zone. The Blue Zone is a big deal. We were in Florida with one of our pastors, and I was sitting in the jacuzzi, and this couple came from Canada. They were snowbirding for a month or so, and we were talking, and then I mentioned something about my daughter being in Loma Linda, because they said they kind of knew Southern California. Oh, I know. They go to a timeshare in Palm Springs. So I knew they knew the area. And I says, oh, my daughter's in Loma Linda. She's a nurse there. And my son is finishing up medicine at Loma Linda. And they said, isn't that the Blue Zone? We were able to strike up a conversation because she'd been reading about the Blue Zone because it is the only Blue Zone in the United States. So there's so many opportunities in which you can connect with people, and that's why we like the Health Age. And Mike's going to talk a little bit more about why the Health Age while I pass out your results.
So the Discover Your Health Age is a program that is a subscription or licensing type program that actually the conference had licensed before we even arrived there. So as we looked into how to use it as a tool, we saw that it actually matched up a lot with what the national interests are going, heralded by the Blue Zone, accentuated by COVID. When COVID came out, I think it kind of revealed that, mainline medicine was a little bit unprepared as far as what to recommend, what to do about it. Everything was fast tracked, right? Even now, there's still some controversy if all of what we are doing as medically as a nation was appropriate now that we look back. But during that time, with all that turmoil, a lot of people were looking for other things to help. Natural remedies, how can I just be healthier, and that sort of thing. And wonderfully enough, the Health Age program actually is based on that type of information. It is based actually it's a licensed software that's based on a study done in Southern California back in the 60s, 70s, up to the 90s. It's called the Alameda County Study. And back in 1965, and this is the reports that you're getting right now, what you checked off, the questions are all based on this longevity study back then, okay? And so what they looked at is 7,000 plus people, and they tracked these 7,000 people in Southern California until the last survey was in 1999. And they're just looking for what is making the part of that group that are living longer, what health habits are they doing in common that seem to promote longevity. And so some of the questions that you answered are based on the questions that the Alameda County study was based out of. And we'll go over some of those results and some of the advice and counsel that you have for that. The other thing is that, of course, other studies that kind of echo what the Alameda County study was like the Adventist Health Study. Oh, thank you. The Adventist Health Study. And there's an Adventist Health Study 1, Adventist Health Studies 2. Some of you here in this room may have been part of that study. Sometimes they'll have questionnaires for some of the Adventist members that were part of that study. And in that study, Adventist Health Study 1 was back in the 70s and 80s, 34,000. That's one of the strengths of the Adventist Health Study, was the sheer numbers of people that they tracked. 34,000 California Adventist Health Study 1 and Adventist Health Study 2. They expanded it across the United States and Canada, and the participants were 96,000. So it is quite a bit. And actually, they included in the second one a little bit more ethnically diverse. But what they found in both of those Adventist health studies is that health is largely shaped by daily choices, reinforced by values and environment, not just genetics or healthcare. And then one thing that Melanie brought up also was the Blue Zone research, and that was a little bit different, is that they looked at it more global, and they looked, hey, where are the parts of the globe that people are living longer? And then once they identified those, of course, Loma Linda was one of those. The initial one, I think, was 5 original areas in the globe. And what they did is they looked at what are the principles of health that contributed to those particular 5 locations' longevity. And so part of that was living with purpose, staying naturally active, eating mostly plants, building strong relationships, and practicing faith or reflection. So it was more than just diet and exercise. It was kind of like a lifestyle type of a study. So all those kind of put together, this program that we use, though, the Discover Your Health Age, was more on the Alameda, based on the data coming from the Alameda Health Study. Lifestyle medicine is also becoming, as far as a profession, a lot more prominent. Before, it used to be part of medical school. They would say that you'd have, you have a few dietitian lectures. But now it's actually lifestyle medicine it can be a fellowship. So when medical students are going to residency, there's residencies that are lifestyle medicine specific. And some, after you complete a residency, you can add on a fellowship for lifestyle medicine, because I think that what's happening is that one thing that I've learned in medicine is the more you learn about medicine, the more you realize we don't know a whole lot. And I think that the general public is now realizing that as well over the last several years, that, you know what, there's a place for medicine and what mainstream medicine has, but it doesn't have all the answers. And so what other things can we do? And unfortunately, for the Adventist Church, we do have the spirit of prophecy, which now we're seeing a lot of the studies coming out over the last several years that are just confirming what the spirit of prophecy has said as far as diet and health. And so lifestyle medicine is actually going to be fitting in nicely. And so now the general public is now very aware of what else is out there and what can I do for my health ahead of time. I remember back when Melanie and I would participate in some churches in California, their CHIP program, which is another health program. Around that time, I remember there was Obamacare was being, that term Obamacare was being let out in the public. And then what we were saying in the CHIP program, when we were at marketing for people to come and participate, say, hey, you hear about, Medicare, Medicaid, Obamacare, that sort of thing, but what about your health care for you? What can you do about it so you won't have to take part in a lot of that insurance because you're going to deal with it now? And so a lot of people said, hey, I really want to do something. What can I do to improve my health now so anything that is going to affect me later on can be pushed further and further and further away, or maybe I don't have to deal with it. And wonderfully enough, our bodies, our Creator in heaven has made our bodies in such a way, so wonderfully and beautifully, that a lot of times if we treat them right, or we treat them better health-wise, a lot of the things that we've done to our bodies, intemperate things that we have done in the past, actually are reversed many times, or at least the progression is slowed. All right. So I think we're going to show a little bit about, since now you have your reports in your hand, and you know a little bit about the background, that it is actually based on a scientific study, the Discover Your Health Age. I think the next thing we're going to do, try going up to the right-hand corner. There it is. Okay. All right, so this is the electronic version. So in the, actually this is how the questionnaire looks like on the computer. Now, one thing that's nice about this is that if you remember, you got the questionnaire on paper, correct? So this computer program has a function that says, well, if you want the questionnaire to go out on paper, there's a button that you push. I think it's down at the bottom. Where's the one where you do the, I think it's down at the bottom, to print out the questionnaire. Oh, it's at the top. Oh, print questionnaire. So then you're going to get the questionnaire that you received. And so in a case where there's a lot of people that are there at your event and you don't have enough time, because a lot of times what we'll do is we'll have the computer, one or two computers, and then people will come up and answer the questions, or they'll get it on paper, and then the person with the computer will enter it in. But so they're the questions that you answered. And then what happens with the report, let's see here. Oh yeah, shall I talk about entering it? Okay, so if you're with the client that's going to be entering, this program is, it requires all the data to be able to put an accurate computation. So that includes the name, the age, weight in pounds, and height in inches or centimeters. And so if any of those are left blank, like the age is left blank, even the gender also, or the weight, you'll know it right away, because when you hit calculate all the numbers, something will be way off. Like maybe the health age will be 0. It's like, what? How come, that's not right? So then you have to just go back. Then you'll just go back and you'll find out, oh, some people, if they don't know their weight, sometimes they'll leave that blank, or they don't know their height. So in part of the event for this, what we do is we'll have a station that has a height and weight, because some people say, well, I'm not really sure. And sometimes they're not really sure, and sometimes they don't want to be sure, Yeah. And then you realize that when you say, well, we have a scale here, so we can check. And they're like, oh no, the evil scale. And so, but to calculate accurately what their health age is, it does use that in the computation. So then you have the things across the top, and then each of the check boxes we simply put into the computer and just mimic what they just did. So we click all those boxes. And I think Melanie's just going to do an example. Is that what you're doing, Mel? Okay. Now, while she's doing that, over on the right-hand side on the computer program, they do show that person's name, which is why we usually, our tradition is to just put their first name and their last initial. Because once in a while, especially if it's in a church fellowship hall and there's a lot of people milling around, if somebody were to walk behind the person putting in the computer, they could literally look on the right-hand side and see people's names and at least know who's participating. And so this is actually very private information. So we try to keep it very private. So one way to do that is to put, and yet have it so we know who to go back to. If somebody needs to correct something, or maybe if they forgot to put in one of the answers, we can always go back to it. Is each entry for an event will be actually entered, and you can see them listed up on that right-hand panel there. And until at the end of the event, when you on purposely eliminate them all or delete them all, they will stay there. And so if somebody comes in and says, oh, you know what, I saw that question about smoking, and actually it's a different answer. You can go back, pull up their record very easily on that right panel, correct the answer, recalculate in just a moment. And so sometimes if we're in a situation where there are a lot of people milling around, even with the last name initial, sometimes we'll put a Post-it note or something that covers a screen on that right-hand side, just for the privacy of people's names, Okay, so Melanie has now inputted all the information there. And at the very bottom of that information, there is something that says Show Report. Oh, yes. Now this is very interesting, because this, whoever made the program, they also put this very bottom part where people that get the paper, you probably saw it on your papers, where you can put your name and your contact information and interests, such as weight management, healthy cooking, depression recovery, stress reduction, these are names of programs that a lot of churches will tend to outreach and use different programs. And so what they would do is they would fill that out. Now, that doesn't have anything to do with the actual calculation, but that copy that they filled out, even though we put it in the computer and we put a report and give it back to them, the original one we keep usually, or the church keeps. And so the intention of that was then now the church, when they get that, they have, so that if they're looking to say, okay, health ministries department, what next event do we want? They could look at the questionnaires and say, you know what, a lot of these people want cooking schools or a cooking class. Why don't we do that next? Or let's say they find out that a neighboring church is doing a depression recovery program. Say, hey, you know what? I think one of the people that filled out that questionnaire was interested in depression recovery. I heard that one's happening in this other church. We should let them know that is happening. So that's the purpose of this. But this bottom part here actually doesn't come into play in the computation at all. So some people will leave it blank, and some people will fill it out, but the actual hard copy of that stays with the church or whoever's running the event. Now, when you do the
That said, though, if you're not using a paper copy as your questionnaire and you're doing this on the fly, just on the computer, then you want to put the information. Because otherwise you won't have any information to go on in terms of what their interests are, or if they want to be contacted, if you have a cooking class, you have nothing. They didn't put that on the hard copy. So if this is your only way of entering information, then you want to put it in. But if you already have a hard copy, I usually don't take it and put it back into here, because I haven't really seen it anyway, because you already have a hard copy. So just save the hard copy, I think everyone here is using OneAccord. Are you guys using OneAccord in this church? Yeah. So then OneAccord becomes your platform to kind of keep track of your interests and what kind of interest people have in terms of health. So the only time you really use this bottom page is if you don't have it filled out on hard copy.
Now, at the fair, would you use the hard copy?
Some of us were doing the hard copy, but a lot of us were just doing it straight in the computer because there wasn't like long lines.
Okay.
If there was long lines, then we'd be like, okay, fill out the paper and then come back in about 10 or 15 minutes. But if there wasn't anybody waiting, we'd do it straight onto the computer. And at that point, you want to get this bottom page.
Right.
Yeah.
Actually, a really a strength of this program is if you can do it one-on-one with the client, or if they give you the hard copy and they're able to be there while you're putting it in. Sometimes they'll strike up a conversation, and so when you say something like, "Oh yeah, like the sleep is a good one," it says how many times a week do you sleep? 7 to 9 hours, and if they start, we've had people do this. Well, it's just been really stressful, and I haven't been able to get good sleep. I said, well, how long has that been going on? Oh, for a couple years now. Oh, really? What stresses you? Well, I have work stress, and then I have this aunt and my daughter, and all of a sudden, the focus isn't really on sleep. It's about their stress or what's causing the sleep issues. And so at that point, then you can start thinking in your mind, what other focused help could assist this person. And so, especially, I had one client once say, I really think that she was actually saying, when I study my Bible, I have a hard time sleeping. I think the devil's trying to keep me from studying the Bible. Then we could say, you know what, maybe you'd like to speak to a pastor. Our pastor is nearby here, our spiritual counselor is here. They can talk to you about that. And so what started off as sleep found its way to something else, and which may actually eventually help their sleep even more. All right, so okay, so then we hit show report, and this is what your report that you have in front of you right now. And so what I'm going to talk to you about is kind of what we talked to the people filling this out. And essentially, there's 3 numbers up at the top, and those are the results. And the far left is your current age, so it's the one that they've put in there as their current age. The one in the middle is the health age. So based on the questions and their health, is their health like now? What is their age based on their health? So in this person here, they're older. They're 71, even though they're only 65. So it's a red flag. Usually when people see that and realize, oh, the way I'm living now, the way I answer these questions, I'm actually further along in my years than I really should be. And that usually, like, oh my, I'm 71. That's not right. What can I do? So usually it spurs on that question, if it's high. And then, now some people you'll get, if this person's 65, sometimes they'll get like 61 and they'll be like, hey, that's pretty good. I'm doing pretty good, huh? But then and that's where the third one comes in, and that's your potential health age, that if you are doing everything right according to what the study data, as far as healthy living, you could be that much. And so usually our first goal when we approach people is to say, if that second number, the health age, is actually higher than your chronological age, then the first goal would be to try to bring that down to about their chronological age. And then if we can get to your potential health age even better. And then the lower part is actually the report of how they answered. So the way generally we could look at that report, the light colored areas, the gray colored areas are areas that actually they answered the healthiest. So in other words, they're doing good. So we don't want to forget those, and we want to essentially tell them that, hey, the light colored areas are the ones that you're doing well in. Keep going. Like in this person, they said that their light colored area over here, they exercise regularly. If they exercise regularly, I think that one is 5 to 7 days a week or something like that. It's frequent most of the week. Then you want to say, whatever you're doing, do that well. But you don't have to spend a lot of time with the client on that one because they are doing it. But that's contributing to their lowering of their health age. So then what you want to direct their attention to are the ones with the red check marks. So the boxes with the red check marks are the ones that could use some improving. There was an answer that was better than the one they provided there. So we kind of look, and so a lot of times people will look at this and say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They'll say 8. Oh my, there's a lot to do. In that case, we don't want to overwhelm them, but they have this hard copy. They're going to take this home, so they'll be able to read through this. But then we can say to them, if you look over these areas, what 1 or 2 things do you think that you could start doing tomorrow? So it kind of, focuses them to something that's a little bit more manageable. Some people will look at that and say, a common one we see is eat more nuts. Hey, I like nuts. I could eat more nuts. And so then we could then talk to them a little bit about what the study says about how nuts help. There's also, not only if they look at what they can do, a lot of times you'll find that some of the clients that are filling this out, there's one in particular that seemed to really hit them close to home. Sleep is a good one. A lot of times they'll say, I could do these other things, but man, I really wish I could get better sleep. And so then as one that's listening to their concerns and going over this questionnaire, the answer sheet with them, you also realize, they have a lot of red checks, but the one that they're most interested in is this one. And that's when you can kind of focus in and see how can you help with that one. So now that you have those different categories, you can actually look as far as it does have a little bit of the explanation or the goal, but this isn't very much of a detail. And so sometimes when this is going on in addition to a health expo where they have some churches, they'll do this, and then in their fellowship hall or outside, sometimes if the weather's nice, they'll have different booths for ones on water, ones on sleep, and they'll have church members there with information. Sometimes this is a good forum to say, oh, it looks like you're having some issues with sleep. We have a booth just around the corner there that has some people that have information on sleep. Make sure that you visit that booth to get some information of sleep. All right. Did you want to continue?
So here are some of the logistics of what you need for the Discover Your Health Age. So you can see here that it's on a website, it's an app, it's a subscription, it's a one-time subscription that can be used in so many different settings. What Mike didn't mention is that in nursing and in medicine and even in the Bible, what did Jesus do, or what did God do after he created things every day? What was his assessment of it? He would say what? It was good, or it was very good. So he assessed his work. So what this is what is their assessment of themselves to that point? So that's really what we're doing, is we're assessing, we're determining what is currently going on. Because until someone has a felt need, why? Why would you do this? Until they see that, oh, my health age is way above and beyond my current years, that's a felt need. So this is one of the reasons why we find that this has been a useful tool in just starting conversations, because it's all about just starting conversations and building relationships. So the first thing that you would need is that this requires a license key. It's not really that expensive, but we can show you, and I can let Pastor Ian know where the resources for that are. You do need Wi-Fi. You'll need either a computer or phone or a tablet. You can use it on any of these devices. You can need a printer, pen, and paper. You don't have to have a printer. Some of this you can do on paper and then just transfer it over from the computer, which some of you, we generated the calculations early for you, so we printed them out. But there were like 3 or 4 who turned it in today, and we just transferred the results onto a template. So we didn't have to have a printer. So we have tried to find, they have thought it through all the different scenarios of what your situation may look like. We're headed to, this is going on YouTube, isn't it? We're going to go to a country that this type of witnessing isn't all, they're not always open to, but there is one day a year that they allow for people to come in and share faith as long as it's connected to health. And we're actually going there next week, where we participating with the health ministries from that region to do a health expo on a certain day on a certain island. So they have us at a certain island in which we can do health education, and we're doing the health age. And what we did is we translated on one side because it's not in the language that's currently available on the health age, but we translated it into their spoken language, and then the other side is English. And so they can go ahead and check it off in their language, and then we put it into our English computation, and then we have the template that is in their language, and we transfer it out. So there's lots of ways of working around the system so that you can still get it done even if the language doesn't exist currently. So those are the basic things you need to run the health age. Next is you just need to know the 3 buttons. And you saw me show where it said show report, and then there's back and new entry. And I'm going to go back and show you these. It's just 3 buttons that you really need to know in order to navigate the program. We talked about confidentiality. We just put the first name and last name. If you notice, when we gave you your reports, did you notice that they were folded? All you saw was the first name. Okay, so you always want to maintain confidentiality wherever you're at, because this is private information. So if we in a group like this, we always fold it so you just see their first name and their first initial. And we already talked about putting a Post-it note on your computer if there's a lot of people around you. One of the things that always happens, it doesn't matter how many times I educate and teach and instruct, fill out every question. Make sure you put your gender, put your weight, put your height. I still have people who forget to put their height, they forget to put their weight, or they forget to answer 1 or 2 questions. That's okay, because this is all about patience, right? We talked about that in the story of Naaman. We have to be patient. Even though we've instructed and we've taught, people forget, okay? So you need to make sure all the information is correct, or it will not calculate it. It'll give you 000 for the 3 numbers. We already talked about that you can use kilograms or you can use pounds. You can use centimeters or kilograms. Oh, I got this mixed up actually. Should be pounds and kilograms, inches and centimeters. Okay. And then, oops, we got, it saves all the data. So at the health fair last year, I think one of the young kids at the Calhoun fair was reading his results, and then it had a check mark on alcohol. And he goes, "Oh, I think I misunderstood that. No, I don't drink any alcohol." So I recalculated it for him quickly because it saves their data. So you can go back into it and then re-enter the correct one and then print out a new one or just change the numbers for him. Well, it became a wonderful object lesson because all of a sudden he saw his health age change from what he accidentally wrote for alcohol and that he doesn't drink alcohol. And it changed it by about 2 or 3 years. And I said, it's only 2 or 3 years now, but actually it's exponential as you get older. So if you were drinking and continued to drink that through the years, what was only a 2 or 3 years difference would turn out to be later 6, 9, 10 years difference in your health age. He was like, really? And he was surprised that alcohol had that kind of effect. So it became a wonderful teaching opportunity. So don't worry if for some reason someone didn't answer it properly. It's all saved there until you go to delete it. So you can just go back to that person's entry and change it and then recalculate it by doing the show report. So it saves it all. The weight. There's a BMI on, you guys all have it. There's on the right-hand side, there's if you think you're healthy weight, moderate weight, but there should be a BMI that we put in pen. When they go to fill that out, or when you went to go fill that out, you wrote what you thought. Like, I'm overweight, I'm underweight, I'm moderately weight, or I'm in healthy weight. You don't actually have to answer whatever question you answered or your health guess answered. You actually don't have to check mark that, because when you put height and weight in, it automatically calculates BMI. So BMI then will determine what their weight is. So when you go to put in the questionnaire for your health guess, you don't have to worry about the weight, because it'll calculate it as long as you have BMI and you have the height and the weight. It'll calculate BMI. Okay, we're going to go to a couple more things related to discover your health age. Keep the original copy. If they filled out a paper copy, then you'll want to keep that, because now you have ways to contact them for all your other events. Plus, you'll know, well, what else are they interested in? What else is our community interested in? Let's see, print out report. Yeah, if you don't have a printer, it's okay. You print out the report, and some of you got a blank report, and we filled it out and entered in all the data. That is fine if you don't have a printer. Now, the last part, and we're going to go into the consultation part. And this is the part where, well, what do you do with all this? So they got their health age, now what? How do we go about the education part? Two ways of going about this. You can do individual consultations, or you can do group consultations. When we first did this, Mike or one other physician or nurse practitioner would come with us and do individual consultations. We found that if the group is more than 10 or 12, we would go way past the allotted time. It just took up a lot of time. If it's a really small group, we can do individual consultation and do kind of group teachings about other things when everyone else is doing consultations. But what we have found is doing group consultation was the best way to get everyone through. Okay. Now at the health fairs or Amen or a wellness day, you might be able, not a wellness day, but a health fair, health expo, or Amen. You can probably, because it's all random, you never know who's coming, and you can always tell them, we'll be done in 15 minutes. We can do the consultation then. So you have to kind of decide what event is going to be like, and would it be better to do an individual or a group? Okay. Our last and final step is related to the education. Now that they've done this, they've done their health age and they know what it is, what are we going to do about it? This is where education comes in. But before we do that, before we jump in to what this might look like, let's just stand up and take some deep breaths. Stretch our legs. Okay, just go ahead and just take your arms and stretch way up high, way up high. And let's just do one arm backward circle, all right, backward circle on the left, backward circle on the right, and then over to your side. Yeah, without knocking anyone over. And then back up again, okay, and then back down. And then now we're going to go forward circle. Forward circle on the right, forward circle on the left. And then without getting dizzy, just turn around and sit down. All right. So this is really the purpose now. The purpose of the health age is really to educate. This is how you're going to connect with an individual. The advantage of an individual is that you really get to know them, and then it's private. They'll share things with you that they wouldn't otherwise do. So by and large, individual consultation is the most advantageous because you get to know them, they will share with you, and if time allows, you're able to share with them. It's not always the most practical unless you have multiple coaches or consultants. Anyone can be a consultant. Okay, you just need to understand what the health age is based on. It is not based on having a huge understanding necessarily on medical. You don't need to be a physician, you don't need to be a nurse. You just need to understand our health principles because all of this is lifestyle health principles. Don't get overwhelmed or be intimidated that you have to be saying things beyond what the questionnaires are asking. The questions are very simple: eating fruits and vegetables, whole grains, nuts, exercise, sleep. Okay, so they're very basic information. If they're needing something above and beyond that, what are we going to ask them to do? If they're starting to talk to you about medical things, well, I'm on this blood pressure medication. We're not here to adjust medication. We're not here to recommend medication, whether to take it or not. Our purpose is to talk about lifestyle habits and how to implement them within their specific diagnoses. So if they're concerned or if they say to you, well, my doctor told me that da 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 da, then you say, well, then I would consult with your doctor first. Okay, so we never want to overstep what our boundaries are. This whole purpose of the health age is very broad strokes. It's an entryway to just having conversations. But the conversations, depending on who you're talking to, will get more in depth. You'll be surprised. I think when we did our Amen, we started doing the Amen health age at the Amen clinics. I think the first one we implemented doing health age was the one in Grayling. And when we did that there, I think I was the one entering the information, and then I would get the results, and then they would go see Mike or another provider. And just them going over the health age with me, I had at least 3 people start crying. Because usually when we got to sleep, there was stress. And I think 2 out of the 3 were deaths. They had lost a loved one and they weren't sleeping well. Or it was caregiving. They're caregivers, and there's a lot of stress in that. They're not sleeping, they're struggling. So then we're discussing about that. So it definitely is an entering wedge to being able to get to know people and be able to build those relationships. So it is important that when you're having an event, is having people in your church who is aware of the events you're currently going to be having in the future, so that, or you know what is happening in your community to be able to refer them. Like, here's another event that's happening, or here's someone that I know that might be able to help you with that. Or there is a walking club, or there's a cooking class. Being a resource, because you can't be everything to everyone, especially if you don't know them very well and you're new to maybe consulting. You want to see what resources are around you so that you can refer them to that. So what our third step is, we talked about pray and plan, pray and longevity. Why a health age and longevity is a wonderful tool, because this is what people are interested in, and they want to have more empowerment on what they can do, not what they can't do, okay, which is sometimes what we're finding in the health field is like, well, we're not sure, or we can't do that, or your insurance doesn't cover that. Well, insurance isn't going to block you from eating your fruits and vegetables and going for a walk. These are things that you can do. And like we said in this morning's presentation, is that this is fundamentally free, okay, to everybody. Okay, so this last one is pray and education. This is Christ's method. He was teaching, preaching, and healing. And basically what you're doing here is you're educating and teaching so that there could be healing that could take place. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is, when we do a presentation like this for a group, And now I'm going into sharing with you what our slides look like when we do it as a group. You yourself will find your own ways of doing that and how to connect with individuals. So for us, ours usually begins with we introduce ourselves, we share what we do, and we share how we got involved in it. And then we go into people want to see who you are and what your family's about. So we often talk about our family. Okay. We talk about our kids, who we are, what we're doing, and how some of this affected our family. Okay. So what I have here is my son is in the forefront and my daughter is with him. And this was their kind of our family engagement gathering. They just got engaged and we all were up in Tahoe snowshoeing. So my now daughter-in-law is between Mike and I. And then this is our Christmas picture here. So our kids grew up with health ministry. My husband's talked about CHIP. When we were in San Diego, we were doing CHIP program. We were homeschooling. So our kids were with us all the time. They were young. We were preparing food. We were doing presentations. And when it was cleanup time or it was getting close to their bedtime, they would just crawl underneath the table of where the food was being set, and they would just take their pillows and blankets and take a little nap. But through osmosis, all that came in, and there's a lot of things that they've learned. And it's interesting how I was the teacher and they were obviously, being taught. Now my son, who is going to graduate from med school this month, right? Are we in May? Not yet, we're in April. Time is going by so fast. Next month in May, he will be graduating. He called us probably about 6 months ago, probably almost a year ago now. He called us and he said, I'm in this class. And I know that, we would walk after every meal. And this is why we did the digestive walk today, is because he says, we have to be consistent with that. We have to be consistent with every meal. And I said, really? He goes, research shows that your sugar will drop up to 30 points. Up to 30 points, Mom. This has been shown over and over and over again that it will drop 30 points he says, don't even do the dishes. I'll do the dishes when I get home. When we go for a walk, I'll do the dishes. We just have to done what you're eating, go out for a walk 5 to 7 minutes, tops 10 minutes. That's all you need to do. As long as you get up from eating when you're done, go for a walk, it will drop your sugar down and help manage it up to 30 points. Whether you're non-diabetic, pre-diabetic, or diabetic, it's going to do the same thing. It doesn't require insulin. It just requires mobility and moving. And so all of a sudden our roles reversed and he was like, okay, we're going to go for a walk now, guys. And I said, I got to clean up. Nope, we'll do it when we get back. So he really taught me a lesson there that is really important, because whether you're diabetic or not, we want to have our sugars managed, because the more they stay within a narrow field, the better your body responds. So now he's the teacher, I've become the student. So when I go through the slides, and you don't have to use slides, basically if you see your report form, what do you notice everything on the left-hand side is? Everything on your report form that I gave you on your health age, what is the common denominator on everything on the left side of your report? See if I can. For the report, in terms of, it's all about food, right? Most of it is about food, about what kinds of fruit, how much fruit and vegetables you have, grains, what else? Nuts, breakfast. Okay, so basically, I will take the left side and talk about the digestive system. I talk about the digestive system and nutrition all in one. Now, you can do that in any way you want to do that, but when you're teaching somebody, I think Mike already told you, keep it simple for them and keep it small. You're not going to teach them everything. Okay, because you can't. This is just an introduction to get them to realize, what can I do now and how can I learn more? Because this is a journey. So that's why we just ask them, pick 1 or 2 things you're interested in. So keep it simple, keep it small, and keep it slow. Okay, slow and steady. So even that 5 to 7 minute walk, even if they're not exercising and you get them to encourage them to walk just for 5 to 7 minutes after every meal, if they're eating 2 or 3 meals, they're almost at 30 minutes. Their goal is 30 minutes a day. But if you can get them to walk 7 or 10 minutes after every meal, and this happened to me one time on an airplane. And so I was on an airplane and I wasn't really excited about this flight because my daughter, who was supposed to come with me, ended up staying in Loma Linda for an interview. And so I was alone on this flight. And I knew that I was going to be in the middle seat. So I was not thrilled. I was in the middle seat, no family around me. But I remembered something someone told me, and I was going across the jet bridge and I prayed. I said, Lord, if there's someone you want me to talk to about health, make it an easy contact. So I get to where my row was and I said, there was a gentleman there and he got up and he says, oh, is this your seat? I said, oh, yes. And he says, how are you? I says, oh, I'm fine. How's your day? And I'm getting seated up and putting my seatbelt on. And he proceeds to tell me, I've had a bad day. I just saw the doctor. He said, my A1C is high and I have to start on diabetic medication. And I said, okay, Lord, thank you. Because he answered my prayer even before I even asked. He had him ready. And this gentleman spoke for 2.5 hours nonstop, all the way to my second flight. I think I was going to Dallas for my connecting flight. And all he talked about was his health, his work, and his family. Anyway, I was like, Lord, what should I tell him? Because he was just talking. The only thing that came to my mind was the very thing that my son had just taught me, because he just talked to me about about blood sugar and how to manage that by dropping it 30 points after every meal. So I barely just got that in, and that was all I said. Well, I asked him permission if I could send him more information. This is early on, probably within the first week or two that we were at the office, at the conference office. So when I came back, Sherry, I think many of you might know who Sherry Christie is, she quickly gathered together all this information related to diabetes, and we sent it off to him. Probably about another 2 or 3 weeks later, I get a voice message, and the voice message was from, and I'll call him Mr. Postman because he was a postman, which turned out that so was my father. And so it was like we connected on so many levels in this encounter. But he got the information I sent him, and he proceeded to tell me that I would like to update you on how things are going. And all I shared with him was just the 5 to 7 minute walk after every meal. Anyways, he was up to a 30-minute walk after every meal, and he was up to almost 2 miles a day of walking. So much so he had a A1C issue, but he also had a blood pressure issue, neither of which he wanted to take medications for. So he proceeds to tell me that after doing this for a couple weeks, he went back to the doctor, and the doctor took his blood sugar and checked his blood pressure and couldn't believe it. And he says, I want you to come back next week, because he didn't believe his numbers. He didn't mention anything about meds, but he said, come back. He came back the following week. They were even lower. And the doctor has not mentioned again. So his A1C, if you're familiar with the numbers, was when I met him, and this has now been, it was in 2024, I met him, and we're still in touch. It was 11. So that was his A1C. His last A1C was 5.6. Oh, 6 point something. It's just outside of the normal. And he hasn't been on any medication. So simple. And the Holy Spirit's going to guide you on this. I really didn't have a lot to share with him. He just needed someone to talk to. So I was just a listening ear. So as you go through your questions with someone, let them lead. Ask them, which of these do you feel like you would like to start tomorrow? And just focus in on that. The last expo, or the last fair we did at the Berrien County one last year, I had one person say to me, well, I want to make some of these changes. Can I call you back up and give you do the questionnaire again and recalculate it after I've done this for a couple months? Absolutely. This is why we're doing this. We're wanting to be supportive. We're trying to create community. We're trying to create relationships. So when you go to do your consultation, keep it simple. We just define what breakfast is. People don't realize that breakfast is just breaking a fast. That's where breakfast came from, that term. Is the best way to break a fast coffee and donuts? No, but that's become the culture. You've been fasting. Your body is now needing fuel. This is the time. So when they say eating a good breakfast, remind them that breakfast means you're breaking your fast. How do you break your fast? What's the best way to break your fast? So that is one of the things that we talk about. And again, these are our slideshows. I tend to like to show a lot of pictures. I like them to see different things that are possibilities. You can do this any way you want. Some people will have a cooking class on breakfast food. Some people just aren't aware of how simple you can do overnight oats. How can you do chia pudding with a lot of fruit, avocado toast? All of these different types of things are simple things. We don't need to be making big, grandiose time because people don't have time in the morning. People are busy. You are needing to work with their time. There's a lot of things that people talk about in terms of fasting, intermittent fasting. We can begin to teach them how they can expand their fasting so that it is 12 or more hours. And if you're going to fast, then how do you do that? And how do you break the fast? So these are just samples of things you can do. One of the things I like to do is if you have fruits and vegetables, you can see here it says serving size. I like to be able to show them, and it's even better if you can do this with a actual visual. And so I have actually, what does it look like to have this many servings of fruit and vegetables in a day? What does it look like? What does 5 servings? Some people don't know what 5 servings of fruit and vegetable look like. And so having pictures or having displays out is the easiest way to do that. If you have a health expo you're doing, have little trays of this is what 5 servings looks like. This is what the rainbow. Some people say rainbow. You tell them that their plate should look like a rainbow. It's a simple way to be able to analyze, am I getting everything I need? Does my plate look like a rainbow? Is there enough colors in there? Does my refrigerator? So even before their plate, the refrigerator should have rainbows because there's no way their plate is going to have rainbows if their refrigerator doesn't have rainbow colors in it. So when they go to the grocery store, pick out colors and bring those colors home and put them on your plate. Okay, so very simple way of educating on fruit and vegetables is the rule of rainbows. And you can't really stress this enough. So I like to show a lot of pictures of what that looks like. And if you're in a setting where you can have samples, even better. I often like to have them to describe a plate. Take a piece of paper, draw a circle, and divide up what their portions should look like. Have them tell you what their plate should look like. And then this would be the answer. Their fruit and vegetables should be about half their plate. And then a quarter of it should be their protein. The other quarter of it should be whole grains. You'll be surprised how many people don't know what whole grains mean. So you'll need to define. If you have nice jars of different types of whole grains right there for them to see, even better. The more visual, people learn by multiple senses. Okay, so if they can see it, if you're doing a cooking class, they can taste it, they can smell it. That's even better. They can hear you lecture about it. All of those things, the more you do of the senses, the better. So usually when I do this, I like to be sharing this and also visual. At least they can see some of these things. Some of these samples of food are actual dishes that a friend of mine has made for potlucks. Doesn't that look wonderful? Isn't that tasty? It's very easy to make things very attractive. And people, just because visually it looks good, they want to eat it. Okay, so 23 and a half hours. This is about exercise. I'm not going to go into this. There's videos out there. If you're wanting to share things in a class, The 23 and a half hours video is on YouTube. It's by Dr. Mike Evans. Easy thing to show people and be able to get them to be motivated to walk. I just shared with you a very simple one after every meal. If you're eating 3 meals a day, you're going to get your 30 minutes in, pretty much guaranteed. And people usually, because what is that feeling you have, especially when you've eaten too much? You feel a little bit sluggish, right? Part of it too is your sugar is starting to rise. But the moment you go outside and begin taking a walk, you're utilizing up that sugar and you actually start having a clearer mind and you start to feel better because your movement is equivalent to the movement of your GI tract. So if you sit down and lie or even lie down, guess what? Your GI is doing the same thing. So if you get up and go for a walk right after eating, that's promoting digest. That's why we call it a digestive walk, is because it's actively digesting your food and utilizing it so that you don't have those spikes. The 23 and a half hours is a wonderful video. I encourage you guys to use that and to show that at any of your, and this is it right here. I'm not going to show it, but it's called 23 and a half hours by Mike Evans. Okay, some other tips. People don't, we can't ever assume people understand simple. Like when I say whole grains, you might all be like, yeah, of course, whole grains. Not everybody knows what all that means, what whole grains means. I usually share with people that I love to go to Mexican restaurants. I grew up in San Diego, so I was next to the border. I ate a lot of Mexican food. When they serve you dishes, sometimes they'll ask you, do you want tortilla or do you want flour tortilla or corn tortilla? Which one do you think is going to be better? Corn. Not everyone knows that though, because whole flour tortilla, usually it's not whole wheat or spinach. Now, some restaurants, if they're more on the healthier side, they might offer you whole wheat tortillas, but they have to say whole wheat tortillas, or they'll say it's spinach tortilla, or they're saying it's some kind of whole vegetable or whole grain. But most of the time, it's enriched flour, processed flour. But corn tortilla is exactly what it is. It's made of corn, so it's a little bit more hearty. So I had to switch from flour tortilla to corn tortilla because that was a better option because it's more of a unprocessed whole grain. So defining things for people like breakfast, like it's a break from fasting. And there's a lot of talk right now about fasting, intermittent fasting. You want to utilize what's currently being spoken of and how do we optimize that to our benefit. So the way the Lord designed us is that we all naturally fast. But unfortunately, many of us aren't fasting very long because we're eating late at night. Then we're rushing off to go to work or doing whatever we need to do. And then we're breaking our fast by just eating something that's just full of calories, but not necessarily full of nutrition. So defining things is important. And that's okay if that's all that you're doing, because some people really don't have the definition of what is a whole grain. In nursing, this happens a lot. We assume that people know what we're meaning and intending. So there was a situation, and just trying to think if this is an appropriate place to share it, because this is going on YouTube. Anyway, it was related to birth control. And so they were educating this mother who she'd gotten pregnant, but she didn't want to get pregnant anymore. And so they're trying to explain to her about being consistent in using the pill. And she came back and she was pregnant again. And they says, well, didn't you use the medication we gave you? I did every day. And they said, oh, well, tell us how you did it. And she literally took it and was putting it in her private area. Because in her mind, that's where this is how I get pregnant. So this is where I put it. And guess what? She got pregnant again. So we can't always assume that people understand what we're meaning. So sometimes you want them to do a return understanding of what this means. Maybe asking them, give me a list of what whole grain options are. Okay, so that you can hear from them what that means, because you never want to assume they understand what you understand, what whole grain means, or any of these other types of definitions. Nuts and seeds. This is where we need to be sensitive to allergies. Okay. And I'm saying this with nuts and seeds because that's a common one, but there are other allergies too. There's gluten-free. There's other allergies related to even some fruit. You know, people are sensitive to certain fruits and their acidity. So as people are sharing, be sensitive to your education in terms of what the other options are. People usually know what nuts are, but people don't really are familiar necessarily with seeds, like how to use flaxseed, how to use chia seed, how to use sesame seeds. A lot of these seeds are from other cultures and other countries that are commonly used, but not necessarily used here. But certainly they're available here to be used. So there needs to be education that nuts aren't just peanuts. Okay, a lot of people just clump nuts as to just peanuts, but there's a lot of different nuts out there and there's a lot of different seeds out there. Usually you can find something that they won't be allergic to, but if not, that's okay. Okay, we need to be open and flexible to people's health conditions. So be sensitive to that when you are making recommendations. I tend to, even though it says nuts and seeds are part of what's recommended here for their certain benefits, but if you have an allergy, that's okay. You can focus in on the other health habits. Okay, when it comes to red meat, it talks about avoiding red meat, and usually I'll ask them, what is red meat? Some people are not sure what red meat is. So we kind of go through different types of red meats. And then after that, we talk about white meat, okay? And making the transition, especially if they are used to eating red meat. They're used to beef. They're used to pig. They're used to bacon. How do we get them to switch? Some of them cannot just switch right away. So that's why having them transition to white meat. What is a white meat that they can be switching over to and describing what they are? Okay, what is white meat? Your poultries, chicken, turkey, fish. Okay, and then eventually going to the point where some churches, instead of calling it dinner with the doctor or supper club, they call it Meatless Monday. Okay, they've just encouraged people, if you are trying to make that transition, let's make Monday a day that you just don't have any meat. And some people says, well, I want to do more than that. Okay, maybe it's Saturday, Sunday, Monday. You know, whatever it is they want to do, you want to work with them where they're at and make that transition with them. So the avoiding red meat, it's not about we want you to be plant-based. Okay, it's about how do we transition you from a more healthier eating and then keep working with them from there. Sleep is a big one. We spend a lot of time with people on sleep. Let's see if I can get to it here. And as Mike said, sleep usually triggers a lot of mental health. So if you have a station on sleep, it's best to have somebody who might be into counseling, because more often than not, there is anxiety and stress. That's usually what gets people with the sleep issues. The other is if they are sedentary. Okay, sedentary and difficulty sleeping sometimes go hand in hand. They just aren't active enough, and so therefore they're not sleepy by the end of the day. So that's an easy fix, right? We already talked about exercise. You can just have them go on a digestive walk after every meal. That's easy. But those who've had a loss, those who are grieving, those who are in a health crisis, those who are going through marital issues, this is a bigger issue than someone that's going to have a health consultation at that point. That way, in situations like this, it's important that you have people who are willing to do some counseling. That might be a pastor. That might be resources in the community. So you might need to know those ahead of time, who they could talk to, who's available to them. I'm getting too close to the mic. Who's available to them to be able to share some of their stress and anxiety, and then how do they cope? Because a lot of this is going to be about coping skills in terms of sleep. Sleep isn't just about going to bed. You think for younger people it is, right? They just hit the pillow and they go to sleep. But as you get older, you find that life stresses keeps you from sleeping. And so it's important to be able to have those listening ear to what those things might be, and then having resources to help them with it. You're not going to be able to solve all that. This is an excellent video. Anything on LifeRx. If you're doing any kind of health talk, I think many of you have heard about the Amen Clinic, right? The Amen Free Clinic. Okay. If you go to Amen's website, they have what's called LifeRx now. LifeRx are all these short videos related to cancer, related to sleep, related to alcohol. What are some of the other ones? I said cancer. I think light is one. Exercise might be one. They're anywhere between 6 to 11 minutes long. They're wonderful ways to have playing if you're having a waiting area, or if it's an introduction to a topic you're going to be talking about. Any of the Life RX videos, they're all being produced with many of the physicians from Loma Linda. And they do a beautiful job in bringing in the science and bringing in the biblical principles. Okay, so this is one on the sleep, the superpower. Very excellent. So we have that incorporated. The more you cannot begin to share all the information needed related to any of these topics. So you're just wanting to inspire them. Your goal is to inspire them and to build relationships. That's your goal. So that way, the next time you have an event or the next time you encounter them, you can build from there. And so having a video or having something like a video or someone to do a little snippet is really a great way to cover information in a short amount of time. This is another big thing is weight. A lot of people have weight issues. And so because of this, most of the time, again, this is not just about calorie intake or calorie expenditure. Oftentimes there's a lot of stresses. People don't even realize that when you don't sleep well, you actually are more prone to gaining weight. So some people who have a hard time sleeping actually typically will also have a weight issue. Some very often go hand in hand. And again, we already talked about the stresses. So yes, food does have a play into it, but so does the stress and so does sleep. One of the things about the health age or even our laws of health is that they're all related. Okay, they're synergistic. You cannot, even though we talk about them in separate entities, they all kind of somewhat overlap and affect each other. And so it's important to bring this out. When we talk about the 23 and a half hours, which is exercise, that's one of my number one go-to. If sometimes they'll say, well, what's the one thing you would tell people to do? I tell them, get out and do a digestive walk. Get your 30 minutes in, because if you're walking, you're exercising, you're probably going to do this outside. So you're getting fresh air. Guess what? Whether the sun is out or not, you're getting vitamin D. Okay, so that's another. When you expend yourself like that, you're going to get thirsty. So you're going to drink your water. And usually I tell people to prehydrate. So they prehydrate and they posthydrate. So you're getting five of the health laws. And then just for bonus, I say, pick a memory verse. Start memorizing while you're on your walk. So now you've got 6. And actually you're getting 7, because if you're training yourself to do this every day and after every meal and memorizing a Bible text, you're practicing temperance and your willpower. So it's an easy way to synergize in a short amount of time one health law, and it incorporates a lot of the other principles in it. So I always like, if someone's not sure what to do, I says, go for a digestive walk. We're only asking up to 10 minutes after every meal. And then, of course, we have the snacking. The snacking is part of the whole nutritional part and the digestion. A lot of people don't understand that our digestive tract is a very complex system. It starts in the mouth and then it ends in the anus. But along that path, you have your pancreas, you have your gallbladder, you have your liver, you've got your stomach, you've got your small intestines, the large intestines, the colon, sigmoid colon. So there's all these parts that make up the digestive system. And the transit time of food works that digestive system. So that's why eating at least 3 hours before you go to bed is so important, because it will disrupt your quality of sleep. It's almost like someone equated it to, it's like, I want to clean the house while you're having a birthday party. Okay, how are you going to clean the house when people are having at the birthday party at the same time? That's the idea of going to eat a meal right before you go to bed. The whole purpose of going to bed is to rest your system and your body so it can focus in on actual restoration and sleep. But you just fed it, and now it has to work at the same time that you're trying to rest. So it's counterproductive. So avoiding snacking keeps you, number one, it allows your digestion to sleep. I think Ellen White says minimum 5 hours. That's the time from the first meal to the next meal should be 5 hours. The other thing is that when we snack, we tend to snack on what kind of food? Fast and bad. It's high calorie food. Unless you're very disciplined and you've got celery sticks in your bag, you've got nuts in your bag, is what I usually tell people. If you're going to snack, bring the servings of fruit and vegetables you need, or have your nuts with you. But otherwise, it's better not to snack, because one, it's typically high calorie if you do, and two, you need to give your gut a rest. It needs its rest so it can perform at its optimum. Okay, we're almost done here. One of the things that we find in the alcohol consumption, I know in some of the blue zone, they kind of contribute a little bit of wine is good for you because of the heart. They're quoting that it has heart benefits, but it doesn't really share how alcohol affects the kidneys and the liver and the mind. And unfortunately, alcohol doesn't just make a direct straight line to the heart to give it its benefits, if in fact, it is beneficial to the heart. It doesn't talk about how it affects the frontal lobe. It doesn't talk about how it's toxic to the kidneys and how it's toxic to the liver. There's really no amount of alcohol that is helpful. So in this video, again, from LifeRx, they do a beautiful job in debunking that a little bit of alcohol is helpful. They show that it is not. And so again, that's like a 7 to 10 minute little video. I think that's a wonderful video to share. It's much easier now to talk about stop smoking. Most people even know that we're supposed to stop. They just don't know how to, right? They understand that they should. My husband has a wonderful story, and I'm going to have him just share a snippet of it, because some people, it's not about giving them data and information on why something is good or bad. It's finding what is the motivating factor. So I'm going to share with him his story about a patient of his and about smoking, and how we have to find what is the motivating factor for change.
I'll call him, this patient, I'll just call him Mr. Johnson. And I would see him in the office once a year or twice a year, depending, but mainly once a year for his annual exams. And usually in an annual exam, we kind of go through kind of the health in general, not just the specific disease processes that may be there. And so one thing that Mr. Johnson, about halfway through, he'd come to smoking, and he smoked every day. So I recall him, whenever I get to that point, I'd say, "Are you still smoking?" And he would say, "Yes, doc, I still smoke." And he'd put his hand up like this, and he'd say, "I know what you're going to tell me. You're going to tell me how it's not healthy for me and that I should quit. But I'll tell you what I tell my family members that want me to quit too. I love it, and I'm not going to stop. But," and he was friendly about it, "you can go ahead and tell me about what you need to tell, because I know you need to do it as my doctor." So I talked a little bit, but I knew, that he was not going to stop. And then one day, that's just about 3 years of this, one day he was on my schedule, and when I looked to see why he was there, it was to quit smoking. And I was pretty surprised. I wasn't sure if I was thinking about the right person until I walked in. I saw him. I said, "Oh, this is one I remember that loves to smoke." So I said, "It says here that you're here at the office because you want to quit smoking. Is that correct?" And he says, "Yes." And I said, "Why now?" I'm just curious, why now? And he motioned to me to sit down. So I said, oh, here comes the story. But the story actually didn't happen that long before. It happened about 4 to 6 weeks ago, maybe it was 3 or 4 weeks before. He was at a wedding reception. It was a family wedding, and I think it was his niece. And they were celebrating at the reception. And he said, my family were having such a wonderful time. It was just a great celebration. And during that time, my grandson hopped up on my knee. And my grandson, in the midst where they're witnessing this reception together, the grandson said, Grandpa, when I get married, are you going to be there? And he said, of course, I wouldn't miss your wedding for the world. Now, this grandson, I think he said he is about 6 years old. He said, I wouldn't miss your wedding for the world. And then he told me the grandson looked around and said to Grandpa, Grandpa, then you had better quit smoking, because if you don't, you will die before my wedding. And Mr. Johnson just looked at me and said, something about his comment just hit me right here. And now I've decided to quit smoking. And I realized, there's a moment of silence at that moment, but I realized that he meant it. I could tell that he was being very honest and very transparent with me. And I realized before we started talking about different ways to strategize how to quit smoking, because he did smoke quite a bit every day, that all the information before about the risk of lung cancer and all that did not really faze him before. His family members' advice and pleading with him to quit smoking didn't really influence him. My advice didn't really influence him, but his grandson's comment did. And so it kind of showed that sometimes the relationships are really important. And that we heard that this morning with Naaman, his servants. Their relationship with him actually was a very big factor into him reaching his healing. And so now, the reason he was there, he said, well, I've decided to quit smoking, and since you present it every year, I figured you could help me. So sometimes the information or the attention when it comes to this discover your health age, it may be just a fleeting moment at the moment that you're meeting that person. But it may put that seed that one day another event may trigger that information to come up. So sometimes we won't see it. We may not even see it while we're here on this earth, but it may be at some other time it will be triggered.
Our goal is to be consistent. Our goal is to present truth and to be able to just be a church that the community goes, that's the church that's talking about health. You may not in your lifetime here see the fruits of this, but what do you want to be known for? So that when they're finally motivated, I think that church is the one who can help me here. Mike and I met in Japan as student missionaries, and I think the Christianity in Japan is like 0.15 or something. It's a very hard country to witness and to convert people into Christianity. And even if they do, they tend to backslide and leave. Very secular country. And so when we were there as student missionaries, oftentimes the baptisms we saw were baptisms from maybe 4, 5, 6 years ago, student missionaries. It didn't happen fast. So when we talk about character transformation and our own expectation, we aren't here to change people's timing of things. We're just here to do God's bidding. And at that moment, what do people need? And it may not, your expectation may not be their expectation. We just don't know when those seeds will actually take sprout. And so This is where the spirituality part comes into, because when they ask about if they're not interested, deeply, moderately, mildly, I used to be afraid to just ask people about their spirituality, but this is an open door. I don't think I have had anybody yet in any of the health age where there wasn't somebody who just said no spirituality. There might be minimal, might be moderate. So usually my entering question, and now it's just fun to see what people say. I said, so what kinds of spiritual activity helps you during challenges in life? Oh, one simple question. That's all I have to ask. And then they start telling me what they do. And we get into all kinds of spiritual, because it's already there. They've already thought about it when they answer that question. So there's not a problem with you asking, but you're asking them, what kinds of things do you do? I start to find out that they love to read books. This happened at the fair. They love to read inspiring books. We had a lot of types and symbols, steps to Christ that we were giving away. And I says, well, would you like to have a book since you like to read? Oh, absolutely, especially if it's going to encourage me spiritually. So we gave them a Steps to Christ book. So the spirituality part here is such an easy entering point, because because even if you ask, even if they said they're not interested in spirituality, you say, well, what kinds of things do you do to help you with even if they don't, we've seen this more in the hospital than I have in the health age. If they are writing like there's no denomination, well, what kinds of things do you do? Well, it turns out that there's usually some kind of spirituality there, because whether it be that their parents are praying for them, or I'm not going to church anymore, I'm not part of a church, but I have a friend who prays. So usually I'll talk to them. So indirectly, they are spiritual, but they don't claim it for themselves. But people are trying to find ways to cope today. So it's not an easy ask to just ask them that question. How do you cope? What are ways that you cope? And usually it comes down to some kind of spiritual context.
And the nice thing is that the questionnaire, the reason that question is there is because studies have shown that people that tend to attend church more often tend to have better health in general and longevity.
Mhm.
So we also saw that a little bit hinted at in Bluesm research. And so there is a statistical reason why that question is there. So when you're answering that, it's purely on it can be purely on just a longevity and health level, but it does open up doors as far as we are open to.
And that's a good point, because the idea of spirituality is about community. Because part of people's belief system is that they are part of a community and they tend to be serving others. And that gives them a purpose. It could be humanitarian focus, but that's still fine. That's part of their spirituality. So those are things that you can talk to them about. And next thing you know, you're talking about, we have AFM and we have all these other projects. And there are a lot of people who are just searching for good projects to be part of. And taking them on a mission trip is a wonderful way for them to still be part of a community, because that's some of what they do to help them with their own spirituality and purpose. So this question is a very powerful question on the health age, because it's known to be part of people's longevity. And some people might even ask, well, what do you mean by this? Most of the time, they will have answers for you. Most of what I find here is when we do the health age, they're the ones talking. You just want to be a listening ear. Sometimes they'll say, well, what can I do with this? A lot of times it's sleep. I heard about melatonin. I heard about this. What can I do? You know, before we get into supplements, usually what I don't have on here is I have a triangle, and the base of the triangle is our 8 laws of health. Then we have our lifestyle. Okay, the 8 laws of health, and then we have simple remedies, and then the last one is supplements. A lot of people are taking supplements, but then they're not sleeping well. They're not exercising. They're not getting their fruits and vegetables in. They're eating a lot of food that is high calorie. How good is their supplements really going to work for them? The only time I recommend supplements is if I know that, one, they're actually low on something, then that's not a supplement anymore, right? That's a treatment. Okay. So if we're supplementing, we have to be supplementing when you're already doing the normal 8 laws of health. Okay. If not, then we need to get back to that first before we start supplementing. So usually when they talk about sleep, I'll ask, well, how's your exercise? Because most people who are exercising regularly, they usually are sleeping pretty good. Okay. My other question is do you drink anything stimulating? That's a very hard question for people to say no to because there's a Starbucks, I feel like, at every single corner, everywhere I turn around, there's a Starbucks. So they're drinking things that stimulate them. And so if it's stimulating you, you can't expect to be able to sleep. So we need to talk about how do you moderate that? What do you do so that you can actually fall asleep? So these are the things we talk about by asking them these questions. Again, this could be done as a group. Most of these slides are done as a group. If we're doing individually, then we're just doing it off of their sheet and we're only focusing on the couple things that they are interested in. Based on the things I talked about, are these things that you feel like you can do? Yeah, the calculations are very easy. If you're the person that's just getting the forms, that's part of medical missionary. You're gathering the information. You're helping the process along. There's multiple steps in this process. Being an organizer, building the team, doing the logistics, someone who's doing the computation. All those are important steps. Then there are those who are doing the consultations. And again, the consultations just need to be simple. You're just trying to inspire by going back to your potential health age. This is the potential health age you want to reach. And you don't need a medication, you don't need a treatment, you don't need a hospital, you don't need a doctor's visit. These are lifestyle choices that are free. Okay. So with that said, that pretty much ends our presentation. Do you have questions in terms of logistics and planning or things that are related to the health age that you have questions on?
Can we recommend supplements, let's say, they said that they're doing those by the 8 laws and then the natural remedies?
Uh-huh.
Because I myself had a hard time sleeping.
Sleeping, yeah.
And I've been doing that, but since I have a hormonal issue,
Yes.
I've been taking some herbs that can, and since then I've been sleeping.
Yeah.
Very good. Maybe it depends on the condition.
Yeah, that's a very good question. Because hormones are going to affect things like sleep, even affect things like cholesterol, even affect things like weight. Okay, whether it's a thyroid issue, whether it's just your estrogen and those types of hormones, they will affect. Okay, so if they are doing all the laws of health, then it's like you might want to see your provider to see if there's any other types of imbalances that can be detected before we go into supplements. And if you're low on certain things. I know Mike can probably answer this a little bit better.
Well, I think that when it comes to personal experience, you can always be okay by saying, this is what I found. It's helpful for me, but it may not help for you. That's a lot of times how we hear about things ourselves. I've tried something before because I have a friend say, "Yeah, I tried this and it works great." I'm just basing it on him. Now, as a physician, my main worry is that are there certain supplements that may have a side effect? Because there are some of those out there that, like for example, there was somebody a patient of mine who said, I want to keep this certain kind of water that says it gives energy. I said, well, let me bring in the water and I'll take a look at the ingredients. And so they said, oh, it's all natural. So I looked at the ingredients, and one of the ingredients was something called guarana, which I know is a bark of a tree, but it's actually like caffeine. It's another source of caffeine. So I just said, you just have to realize that what they have here is you're actually taking caffeine water. They go, what? Really? I don't, and there's other side effects that can happen. Raise their blood pressure for a while, a heart rate, and it can actually make their sleep worse, but they'll feel a little energetic, right? And so that's what they're thinking, they're feeling energetic. I said, as long as you realize that this is likely one of the reasons why you feel energetic, just to let them know. So, so usually if somebody says, it's good for them to take a look and see what's actually in it. A lot of times manufacturers will say, here's a multivitamin that gives you energy. The question is, what vitamins and what gives the energy? And sometimes they'll slip in something like that, so you feel energetic. And some people may want that, but as long as they know what they're getting. So I think that as far as advising supplements, if you've used it and you say, you know what, I found this helpful, you may find it helpful, but you can always say, you can check with your doctor to make sure there's nothing else, because they can do some tests and things like that, make sure that you're okay. But the thing is that we have to try to avoid, even doctors have to avoid, it's like, oh, I think this will help you. Then, without knowing their history, that could actually be kind of dangerous for them. And so,
Can we tell them that they can go to a naturopath doctor or?
Yeah, that's fine. They can explore a naturopath doctor. Just remember, cannabis is also natural. Okay, so you have to be careful how you're using the terminology, because they might be getting advice. So they're going to have their own filters when they're going to talk with somebody. And again, our guidebook for that is going to be the Bible, right? Is understanding, does this align with our frontal lobe, our moral reasoning? Will it affect all of those things? Okay, because again, cannabis is natural, it's a plant. But does it have an effect on our reasoning power? It certainly does. So we do have to be careful. Does it have some wonderful effects on pain? It certainly does. I'm not the one to judge that. That person will have to make that decision on their own, but they should have all the information that they need so they can make the right decision. Those are good questions. Anybody else related to logistics on using the health age? It's a very small investment for a very, I say, powerful tool to get a lot of information and to provide a lot of information to people. It allows them to really ask for their own information. Without us telling them what they need to know, they will have already evaluated themselves. We've enjoyed using this and we've made a lot of connections because of it. So, and it can be used again, like I said, in many different settings. Well, if there's no other questions, shall we close with the closing prayer? Heavenly Father, we are so grateful for your love and your desire for us to have an abundant life here on earth and for eternity. May our goal always be in all that we do and events that we have, that we are just glorifying you and pointing each person we come in contact with to you. We pray for each one here and for their future events and how they will minister, whether it's at ACS, at a fair, a health expo, here at church, or even on an airplane, Lord. May you provide us the divine appointments to touch people. In your name, amen.
Thank you so much. All of you, my potential.
Oh, there you go.
Six different different city